Hello YouTube! Today I am going to show you how easy it is to print and paint this house from the 1968 film Planet of the Apes. I am going to use simple techniques that anyone can copy, and I will also use inexpensive materials that are readily available from places like Walmart and Michaels. First, we need to download the STL files from this website. This is my 3D printer, the Anycubic Cobra 2 Pro. It's a nice and inexpensive model for beginners, and it does a great job for me so far. I like to use Anycubic Slicer next, since it is also from the vendor Anycubic. It is based on Orca Slicer. So before you can do a 3D print, you have to open the STL file in your slicer software, which I've done here. And this house has lots of curves, overhangs, and top surfaces. All of these can be difficult to print smoothly. Here are some of the important print settings that I set that you might want to consider. On the Speed tab, I set the overall speed to be 50 millimeters per second. So I've really slowed it down. The Cobra 2 Pro is a fast printer. It likes to go at 220 millimeters per second, but if you slow it down, it does a lot better job on the overhangs and curves. If you go to the filament settings on the cooling tab, I also set the fan to go 100% all the time, which cools the filament and does better job on the overhangs. For strength, on the strength tab, I set wall loops to 3. These are also known as perimeters or outer perimeters in other slicer software. 2 I think was the default. 3 again, the extra loop tends to help with overhangs. And then if we slice it, you'll see that it'll be 14 hours and 26 minutes. But here's the real trick. If you go back to prepare and you select the model, this is what I did. I set the variable layer height. So I left it at 50 and hit adaptive. And then you could see on the grid down here that the black line is the 0.20, which is the standard layer height. But in all these other areas, and you can see as I go down, there's a yellow line here. You could see that on the lower ones, it can go at a higher layer height, like here's 0.23, for example. And then in the darker green ones, it goes way lower and smaller. That's as low as my printer will go, 0.08. And that's when you get the better details and you get the better overhangs on the lower volumes. So if I preview this now, it goes from 14 hours to 21 hours now and a half, but the extra time is worth the wait because it will do a much smoother and nicer print job. This is what the finished print looks like, and now we need to remove the supports. Some of them will just snap off. And for others, we need to use pliers. Now that we've snapped all the supports off, we want to do a little bit of maybe filing and sanding on the rough areas. So you can take a file and take off the spots where the supports are still a little bit left. And you can also take some 220 grit sandpaper and smooth the edges. Now this step is optional, but what you can do to make it look more like concrete is take some Gorilla wood filler and spread it on the model. So you can do that a couple of ways. One is just take your finger and spread it on. just loosely, because that will give it a little bit of texture. And the other thing you can do is take some filler, add some water to it, and then paint it on. And then it will leave, you could see the little pieces of particles. When it dries. In the end, I decided to do 3 coats of wood filler to get the look and texture that I was after. And now it's time to add the primer. Normally, I would spray the house with this flat white primer here, but the base coat of tan that I want to use contains paint plus primer, so I'm not going to use the primer at all. I'm just going to go right to the tan base coat. So I'm going to go outside and spray the house now. This is what the house looks like when the base coat is finished. We could stop here, but I'd like to show you something really cool. Now we will add some washes to break down the base color and bring out the details. In a small jar, I have mixed 1 part acrylic paint with 10 parts water and 1 drop of dish soap. The paint is acrylic burnt umber, which I got at Michael's. The dish soap will help improve the flow of the wash and reduce the surface tension of the water and acrylic paint. You could also use an acrylic paint thinner like this, but I want to avoid strong chemicals and just use water. To apply the wash, we're just going to bring the house over, stir it up, and paint over the top of every surface. Okay, and what we can do is use a paper towel to blot off just the top surfaces because they would be lighter from the sun, and leave most of the wash on the sides. And this is why we did that step of adding the Gorilla wood filler to the model, because it gives the wash something to stick to and pool around in all the little nuggets. So now we'll just leave it to dry and decide if we need to put on another coat of wash. At this point, I have added 2 burnt umber washes and then 1 black wash with this paint from Walmart, 1 burnt sienna wash, which is a little bit more red, and then 1 final burnt umber wash. Now we will dry brush some light tan across the top surfaces. So again from Walmart, this folk art, this is parchment color. And to dry brush, we'll just spray it a bit out. We'll put it on our brush. And then with the paper towel, you kind of get rid of most of it. And then you can just dry brush over the top surfaces. These would all be lighter on the top because this is where the sun fades it. And it just gives us a little bit more depth. So I'm wiping most of it off, and then we're just kind of scrubbing it on the upper surfaces. And now I think we're finished all the dry brushing. We'll wait for it to dry, and then we'll spray on one final coat of Rust-Oleum matte clear enamel to seal everything up and protect all the paint. So I'll go outside and do that in a few hours. In conclusion, this was an easy and inexpensive project that anyone can do. If you have any other ideas for how to do this, please drop a comment below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.